to start with a movie like Trust, I like how contained it ends up being.
Mhm.
For you as a creative, what is the fun of getting to be part of something that, while it has other sets and there's other moving pieces, it kind of ends up in this more contained place throughout the course of the film?
Well, I would say first, it's, this being my first movie that I've actually got across the finish line, it was really inspiring to read a script like that and be able to find someone like Sophie that can take such a contained place where the majority of her acting is kind of, it's just by herself, which is so hard as an actress to not be bouncing off with each other in the same room and bringing those scenes to life and making it, in my opinion, probably like by far the most entertaining part of the movie too, you know? So I would say that.
When I like the themes of this movie too, because it talks about a child actress, which Sophie obviously was, and kind of the change and all of those things that come along with growing up in the spotlight and what happens when you've kind of passed the point of being the child star and into being an adult actor. How fun is it to get to play with those themes where it is, an audience is going to sit there and we're going to be like, yeah, well, Sophie Turner, that was her story. She was on
Yeah.
Game of Thrones as a kid. And we already have that kind of connection in our own ways to the story.
Yeah, I think, well, it's twofold question because for us as, creatives and producers, we wanted to make, especially our first film for Republic Pictures, not just be like your standard slasher, like guy kills girl, whatever. We wanted there to be an important message behind it and kind of add some depth to the film. So playing with what you just talked about really made it so it's a great story and it's a great, it's a women empowerment story about how she overcomes all these people that are against her and she grew up and so to us, it was really important that there was layers to this story, and it wasn't just like your standard, like I said, slasher guy kills girl. And then on the other side of it, I think that's what really attracted Sophie to wanting to play this role was the fact that she felt so similar to this girl Lauren Lane, while also dealing with her own relationship complications during the time of taking on this role. And I think it was just a way for her to kind of I guess, use some of those emotions she had from her real life and really actually use them to flourish on the screen.
When you mentioned, the theme of like female empowerment, all that stuff, how important was it for you guys to find a director
Yeah.
that wasn't just gonna, you have a female director, it's not a dude. And a lot
Yeah.
of times we would be telling these stories with a man behind the camera. So it's like, okay, well, I
Mhm.
guess it's a half win. How important was it for you to make sure that that wasn't the case this time around?
Yeah. And it actually, it goes off your question before this too. So Carlson was a child actress as well.
Mhm.
So we found Carlson, we hit it off right away. And Carlson basically, we worked on it for a while. She brought in, so she did a movie called Upgraded right before she did Trust with Us. And she used Justin Matthews and Luke Roberts, who did some buffing on that script for her as well. So she brought them in. She kind of made the script a bit more of her own, and we kind of worked together on that. And it just being able to tell the story from her lens of going through that and also being able to be really tight with Sophie and talk about things that might be vulnerable just to them too, I think really enhanced the storytelling process for us.
When you also talked about producing as well, and it's always fun when you talk to people who are creating something and they're producing it and they have a little bit more control. How did all those conversations pan out when you have someone like Carlson who is like, okay, let me bring these people on to buff it?
Yeah.
You have Sophie who has opinions. How was it to all work together to kind of create what ended up being the final product?
You know what? I think this project, although it was my first one, is always going to stand out as being unique because basically what happened was I got Carlson on board. We basically got the script where we wanted it, and we were really close to about to start casting it. And then the strike happened. So we couldn't really advance the project at all. But me and Carlson obviously wanted to stay active. And, it's kind of like you can't just sit there for 6 months and just be too super stagnant. So we'd go grab a drink, hang out as friends, and through that process, we'd probably hang like once a week. We became so close that by the time the strike was over, we really like attacked this thing as a team. And it was fun for me to be able to not be like, the producer that kind of puts the things together and is hands off. I really was able to be in there like with her. And although it's her story, still be able to be there and bounce ideas off each other and just kind of like worked on it in a sense as a family after being together for so long.
When I always like to ask people who do produce, what for you is like the thing you look for when you are looking for a project to kind of dive into? I know this was your first, but like,
Yeah.
is there something that you're always like, well, I want to tell stories that do this, or I want to tell stories that do that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you asked that because actually right now I'm in the process of obviously this one's coming out and I have about 6 to 8 ones that I've been developing throughout that we're going to have to start making now as soon as this is done. So for me, I think and everyone has their own, touch they want to have on things. And I'd say for me, I want to make sure that I never tell a story like we talked about earlier with the depth of this project having it to do with, female empowerment and the story that she was telling. I never want anything, I don't want people to leave the theater and be like, that was entertaining, but there was no message, you know? Like, I always want to make sure that, for instance, I don't want to give too much away, but I'm working on a horror right now that is a possession horror, but there's a message behind it that basically talks about borders and the border right now, the Mexican border, and issues that are going on with our everyday life. And I just want to make sure that I'm telling stories that people can leave there and understanding that there is a deeper message behind things that they're just seeing on screen.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
that's
I love that because everyone was like, they're missing the point of weapons. So a lot
yes,
of being like
yes,
weapons is about nothing. Like, no, it's not.
no,
It's about grief. Like that's the whole thing about it. And so I love that, like, especially as horror as a genre, that's the whole thing is that you're scared, but then when you think about it, every single horror movie has some deeper message.
yep.
And you said you're working on another horror movie. Is there though a genre that you're like, if there's untapped potential that we're not doing with anymore that you are like, I really want to find something in there next?
Yeah, you know what? So I'm going to be making these genre movies for a little bit here, and I absolutely love them. I think it's fun, like we just talked about. You could do things where it's still scary in a house, but there's a deeper message. You could tell a great story. I think there's untapped potential right now, and something that I'm a big fan of, in kind of, and it's gonna sound funny at first, but in kind of the sci-fi fantasy realm, because there's such big movies right now. Like you have your Marvel and DC movies, and you have these event-worthy blockbusters. But I think there used to be in films that I grew up on of stuff that was kind of in between in that realm. And I would love eventually one day to be able to work on movies that are like that as well.
Yeah, your Willows and all of those kind of
Yes,
like
yes,
weird.
exactly, exactly.
That's
No, but
fun.
exactly that. Yeah,
Yeah, I get it. I'm a big like, where am I like? I'm glad the Naked Gun is doing well because I'm like, where are
yes,
those comedies anymore? They
yes,
those in rom coms just like vanished all of a
yep,
sudden.
yeah.
But for our last question, I always like to ask, the prod, especially with a producer, you guys start on projects right at the beginning, and you're part of the process to get it up and moving, and throughout the filming process and all of that. But now it is at the point where it is going to go out in the world and people are going to see it for themselves. How it does it feel for you to kind of let it go at this point and allow people to get to experience it on their own since you can't change anything and there's nothing else
Yeah.
the back end that you have to do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I'm such a perfectionist too. Like there's always things you want to just change. But what was inspiring for me was we did a little screening a couple weeks ago at
Mhm.
Paramount just for some friends and
I
family.
just missed it by like a day.
Oh,
I had to leave. I had to go home.
oh, that's too bad. So basically for me is that was the first time I ever saw trust with an audience. And you're watching it and there's still things that I want to nitpick as I'm watching it. But the audience really received it so well. Like everyone loved it. Everyone got scared at the right times. Everyone laughed at the right times. You felt the unease at the right times. And so leaving the theater, I basically thought to myself, like, it's almost like if you did more, you'd ruin it. And it's at a perfect place right now. So it's kind of a sense of relief to watch everyone really receive the film the way it was supposed to be received and just be like, okay, like that's good. Because I actually find myself sometimes rewatching stuff that you're working on and being like, what if I change this and that? But then I can't even imagine the films that we both love that are our favorite movies. I'm sure the people that made those are like, I could probably change these little bits in there too. And then it would have ruined it. So you got to just eventually take your hands off.
I agree. I understand that feeling, but I can't wait for everyone to get to see Trust. And so
Thank you. Of
thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
course. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank
All
you.
right.